As if the situation in Canada, which has to be one of the most unfortunate nations on earth, subtracting any third world nation which don't have clean running water, Canada, as if the situation couldn't get any worse, especially from a financial aspect. We all know that the Canadian government is as bad with money as any teenager who has $100 allowance. But get this, we have this woman by the name of Adrienne Clarkson. Has anyone ever heard of the name Adrienne Clarkson? Has anyone ever heard of that name? I've heard of her, but I want to know, have you ever heard of her? And I'm not talking about you hearing from her from the Iran Nation, or you're hearing from her in recent news bulletins or in the newspaper or in the media as of recent. Have you heard of her before all of that? Before I mentioned the name, before the National Post mentioned the name, before the news media mentioned the name, before the Taxpayers Federation. Have you ever heard of Adrienne Clarkson? Okay. And now my next question would be, do you know what the Governor General of Canada does? Do you know what their role is, what their position, what they're supposed to do day to day when they get up at 6 o'clock in the morning? If they do get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, what they're supposed to do for the people of Canada? Does anybody know that? Does anybody know who the current Governor General of Canada is now? I'm just asking these questions to the average Canadian who's at home on this snowy night, depending on where you are, snowy night, it's snowy here, drinking some tea or whatever, you sit down, you want to relax to the Iran Nation. I'm just asking you these questions. I'm not trying to patronize you or anything. I'm just asking you these questions. Well, we all know that Canada belongs to something called the Commonwealth. And that the Queen, she says she's the head of state. She says she's the head of state, which is ridiculous. Everyone says, oh, that's heritage. You can't criticize. Well, I'm a Canadian. I'm as Canadian as Tim Hortons coffee. And the natives are more Canadian than all of us put together. The Frenchman in Quebec is Canadian, and that is not their culture. But anyway, we'll give it to you. I don't want to offend anybody, but we'll give that to you. We'll give that to you. English Canadian, even though the English Canadian has done a poor job at defending this country, we'll give it to them. But the Queen appoints, or supposedly she appoints, the Prime Minister in the Queen's name appoints a Governor General to do the jobs that the Queen would do in Canada. And Adrienne Clarkson was a Governor General of Canada. She's no longer Governor General. Now, she is long gone, and she's old. I think she was in the Chrétien years or Mulroney years, whatever. But this woman receives more money today, yearly, than the average Canadian veteran. And I can tell you right now that most Canadians, if you were to go outside in Markham, Toronto, Oshawa, Quebec, Alberta, Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, you ask the average Canadian, they will not be able to tell you who Adrienne Clarkson is or what her job title was as Governor General. They wouldn't be able to tell you anything. They could tell you about the next hockey game. They could tell you about the Leafs playing this and that and blah, blah, blah. They couldn't tell you anything about Adrienne Clarkson. But she receives yearly, and this has come out by the National Post, $100,000 a year in expenses. The former Governor General, she's not the current. Never mind being the Governor General. I don't think there should even be a Governor General. But she's not even Governor General, whatever he or she does. But this is a former Governor General, the former of a title which really is pure pretentiousness and just pure fashion. It's almost like being Miss America or something like that. That's how I see it. But this person receives $100,000 a year in expenses from we the taxpayers in Canada. And this is from the National Post. Clarkson has billed taxpayers more than $1.1 million in expenses since she left Rideau Hall in 2005. Can you imagine that? She has received another $1.6 million to date as a government pension. A former Governor General Adrian Clarkson is still billing Canadian taxpayers more than $100,000 a year in office expenses and has now claimed more than $1.1 million in such expenses since she left Rideau Hall. The expenses paid through an unusual program that allows former governors generals to bill for office expenses for the rest of their life is used by other former governors general as well. So all the governor generals are doing this. And there are many governor generals that are still alive. David Johnston was the most recent one who left. Now we've got this one here who this little Julie Payette who ran over someone in Maryland. Justin the Longhair and Mac Daddy Trudeau brought in this airhead, this murderer, I would say, who ran over someone in Maryland. It's in the news. She ran someone over in Maryland, and now she's supposed to be some governor general. I mean, what, a governor general, the Queen's representative of Canada. What kind of nonsense is that? The expenses are on top of the $1.6 million that Clarkson had collected to date as a government pension. It also does not include the $3 million in a startup grant, plus up to $7 million over 10 years to match donations from the private sector. That was paid to establish Clarkson's charitable organization, the Institute for Canadian Citizenship. Both the pension and the startup grant are standard for outgoing governors general. Now, let me show you what the average veteran in Canada makes. This is from Veterans Affairs Canada, and I have put this website up on the comments section, as have I've also put the article about Adrian Clarkson and all the governors generals who are milking money from the Canadians when they have done a job that really does not sound like any. I mean, this is certainly no doctor, this is certainly no lawyer, this is certainly no senator, this is certainly no prime minister, this is certainly no mayor, this is nothing. I mean, what does the Queen's representative do? Well, she does what the Queen does in England. And what does the Queen do? I mean, yeah, she'll show up at ceremonies, she'll wave, she'll cut ribbons, she'll sign documents, but you don't do much else. And for that, she's getting $100,000 for. She'll read the Queen's speech or the speech from the throne every year at Parliament, and that's pretty much, or after a general election, and that's it. I could do that with my hands tied behind my back and both my feet chopped off. But the average veteran or survivor as of September 28th, 2018 gets $1,619.61. A veteran with a spouse or a partner receives $2,413.65. Additional amount for each dependent child, $359.10. If we continue down the line, clothing allowance, the highest amount you can get for clothing allowance is $209.39. This is for veterans now I'm talking. Canadian Forces income support, we've mentioned that. We've mentioned that orphan. If you get an orphan, you adopt someone, or you're an orphan, $769.73. Disability, single class 1, $2,792.53. The spouse, $698.13. And for one child, $363.03. And second child, $265.29. This is for veterans. That doesn't come close to $100,000. Not even close. Not even a whiskers close. Adrian Clarkson would spit on that. Now let me tell you something. I have nothing against this woman personally. I mean, she's getting what she's getting. I mean, she was the Governor General, so she's getting what she's getting. But I have a problem with this system. This system, and this is happening in Canada. This is probably happening in other Commonwealth countries. I don't know. I mean, Jamaica is a part of the Commonwealth. I couldn't see them being as stupid as we are doing this. I mean, with all the amount of hungry people out there in Jamaica, a lot of problems, a lot of poverty, a lot of, things. It's a third world country. I mean, if this was happening in a country like that, I could expect the people of Jamaica would riot in a second. But we Canadians, we just sit back and we allow the system to take advantage of us like this. That money could be used. I mean, it's not a lot of money when it comes to taxes, but it adds up. I mean, it's adding up right now. I mean, look at that. $1.1 million since she left Rideau Hall. That money could be used for other things in Canada. Why are we allowing this person we call a governor general, who I don't know what they do when they wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning? I don't even know if they wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. But, I mean, you don't hear about the governor general in the news. You don't hear about them anywhere. The only time you ever hear about them is when they're reading the speech from the throne and they sit on a throne and they pretend like they're some kind of king. But other than that, you never hear about them. You never hear about them. And this is a problem. So I'm saying, if this situation, at the very least, we need to get rid of these people's entitlements and all this stuff that they're getting. I mean, this is basically free money. You get the right connections, you know the right people, and then that person becomes prime minister and they appoint you as governor general, and then you become governor general. You kind of just do your thing. You cut ribbons, you wave, you open the parliament, you travel around Canada, maybe play hockey, meet a few Indians, eat Tim Hortons donuts every once in a while, pretend like you're mingling with the people, and then when you're done, you get $1.1 million. That doesn't make sense. I mean, and we're supposed to be a democracy. So either we need to stop this system. Number one, we need to get rid of these entitlements for these former governor generals and current governor generals. Number two, we need to give way more money to the veterans of our country, which the long-haired Mac Daddy says that veterans are asking for too much. So that's not going to happen anytime soon if he's prime minister. Or number three, I would just say we get rid of this whole monarchy. We get rid of it. Just get rid of it. Now, I know the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, English people, that's our heritage. You can't get rid of that. You can't. But I mean, listen here, brother. Listen, yeah, you Wolf and all those people defeated the Frenchies, and all those people defeated them at St. Lawrence and at Quebec City and all that stuff. Yeah, I understand that. But I mean, the thing about it is that we're talking about current affairs, and we're talking about the modern era. We're talking about a democracy here. And you can talk about heritage all you want, but the white Anglo-Saxon, the English Canadian, I mean, we got French Canadians, we got German Canadians here, we got Irish Canadians, we got natives who were here before everybody, we got Vikings who were here even before the English Canadian. I mean, the English Canadian was the last white man to come to Canada. And then, of course, we got, Canadians of Caribbean descent, which I belong to, Canadians of African descent and Asian descent and all this stuff. And that queen doesn't mean anything to them. But the queen, it's not even the queen. It's these governor generals. We don't even know who they are, where they come from. What is this? We need to get rid of that. I think if we're not willing to say, hey, your time as governor, if you're governor general, you're not going to get millions of dollars or 100,000. You're going to get the same amount of money that our veterans get, if not less. If we're not willing to do that, then I say get rid of the whole thing. But something is not right here in Canada. I mean, we can't continue to allow our government and our government officials and our elites to do this to us. Now, you got to hear what I have to say, including the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. You all got to hear what I have to say. You're all being milked. All of you, and all of you who say, oh, it's our heritage, you're probably being milked more than anybody. Because you see what's happening to the white man and Canadian in Canada. They're being taken advantage of very harshly. Their position is being slashed and trashed and split up, and so they're probably being taken advantage of more than anybody. This has to stop, and it needs to stop now. This is the Rana Nation.